here with my review of It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, which is this beautiful book. Oh jeez, I really don't know if I want to do, like, I want to film this, but I don't want to film this. I don't know, I'm so torn about it. I'm going to start with no spoilers and go over the basics, and then I'm going to go into spoilers. I will totally give you a warning if you want to watch the beginning part. If anything, I think this is more of like a discussion than a review, but I'll try and do some reviewy things as well. I'm actually just going to read you the synopsis because I think that's the easiest / safest way to give a synopsis. Also, I feel like I'm horrible at synopsizing books. Whoever has that as a job is like, they're a genius. I mean, really everyone is, you know, like all girls are princesses. Okay, so here's the synopsis. Okay. Lily hasn't always had it easy, but that's never stopped her from working hard for the life she wants. She comes from a long way from the small town in Maine where she grew up. She graduated from college, moved to Boston, and started her own business. So when she feels a spark with a gorgeous neurosurgeon named Ryle Kincaid, everything in Lily's life suddenly seems almost too good to be true. Ryle is assertive, stubborn, maybe even a little arrogant. He's also sensitive, brilliant, and has a total soft spot for Lily, but Ryle's complete aversion to relationships is disturbing. As questions about her new relationship overwhelm her, so do thoughts of Atlas Corrigan, her first love and a link to the past she left behind. He was her kindred spirit, her protector. When Atlas suddenly reappears, everything Lily has built with Ryle is threatened. With this bold and deeply personal novel, Colleen Hoover delivers a heart-wrenching story that breaks... Okay, that part's not important. Although it is very personal. I gave this book 4 stars, and I will say right now, total trigger warning for domestic abuse / violence and rape. So I will say that to me this book is more about Lily than it is about the romance. So not that romance doesn't feature heavily in here, of course it does, it's a Colleen Hoover book. Its core, the story is more about Lily and her journey in her life, and the story does go back and forth between like present day, which actually covers a pretty good chunk of time, and her past, like when she was in high school in Maine. You kind of see her grow and learn things and come to terms with different things in her life and with people in her life, like her family and friends and all of that. I think it is a good book. This book, in my opinion, was written with a purpose, which is a very important purpose, but I feel like in some ways that hurts the book. Like you almost feel that too much. So that's all I have that's non-spoilery. I'm so sorry. And I will say, in case you want to check out now and you happen to watch my reviews a lot, I'm not going to do would I recommend this for this book. I just think it's too complicated of a situation to figure out if I would recommend it or not. Which is weird because I feel like a lot of Colleen Hoover's books are very weird and kind of difficult to recommend. Like, I know a lot of people have issues with Hopeless. And I don't have issues with this necessarily, but I think it's a very difficult thing to recommend. So anyways, that is it for the no spoilery section. I know it wasn't a lot. I think if you like, you know, whatever. So now I'm going to go into more of a discussion, and I'm going to discuss spoilers. You have been warned. So this book is about domestic abuse. So that's the purpose of this book. That's the message that this book was written to tell. It is strongly influenced by Colleen Hoover's own life. So like there's like an author's note at the end where she talks a little bit about that, about growing up, that her father was abusive, and her mom did ultimately leave, and that her father was always good to them, like to the kids, but it was only to her mom. And that is definitely what happens in this book. Like, you can tell that this is very much a representation of the domestic violence and abuse that Colleen Hoover witnessed as a child. So like I said before, this is an important story. I think it's important for people to read books like this. not to like throw shade or anything, but I find it very ironic that Anna Todd, that's her name, right? Yeah, who wrote the After series, blurbed this book, because I only read the Wattpad version of her books, and I read After, and I read part of the second one, and then I couldn't do it anymore because it's so abusive. In addition to being a story, so what I mean by it being important is I think it's important in real life for people to know that domestic violence and abuse is out there, and that things can seem great on the outside, but they're not always on the inside. And like, I'm coming at this from the perspective of a person who, I've never been in an abusive relationship. I've never been around an abusive relationship that I know of. And I think it's important to show how women can end up in situations like this, especially when they know better. Which I put in quotes because anyone can end up in that situation. Like, I would like to think that if somebody treated me the way I've seen some like male heroes treat women in books that I consider abusive, that I would leave before even like a hand was raised. And definitely if somebody hit me, that I would leave. But you don't really know if you would until you're in that situation, and hopefully nobody ever is, and that's like, that's the best case, is that nobody ever is, but most likely somebody will be, obviously. I think it's important to see that, and I think it's also important to see different kinds of abuse. So I think Ryle is an example of that. Some people are just universally abusive people, and others are abusive only to their significant others, and that's a perfectly valid story choice. I think some people might have had issues with that, but I do think that happens. It's relatively common from my understanding. It's not the only way somebody's abusive, it's just one of the ways. I will say I don't really like the romance, to get off abuse and less heavy stuff. I don't particularly like the romance with Atlas, so I feel like I need to qualify that actually. I do like it. Like, if this book was like a series, maybe like a multi-part series where like Lily was able to really come into herself after she left Ryle and then grow, and then we really saw her relationship as an adult with Atlas develop, I could have been there for it. Or if the Ryle thing was much more toned down and then Atlas had more of a perspective or something, maybe then I could get behind it. But here it just felt almost forced. Like, I like them together, I think they're cute together, and I wish them both the best, you know? But it felt a little unnecessary, and it felt almost like maybe it took away from the book. Like, maybe it didn't. Maybe if I ever reread this, which I'm not sure I would, maybe I would view it differently. But it just kind of felt like the book needed to end with a romance, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I am a romance fan, but honestly I'm not even sure this book should be classified as a romance. But even if it is, I guess Happily Ever After doesn't necessarily have to be, like, yes, in its purest form, a happily ever after is like two people, most likely in most books, getting together, finding their happily ever after together. But I think a perfectly valid ending for this story would have been Lily finding her happily ever after on her own, like with just herself. And this book was so close to being there, I guess. I don't know. And then I think the last thing I want to say is I've seen a lot of negative reviews about this book, and I mostly look at reviews on Goodreads. And I don't always read reviews, which I feel like is horrible because I like write them, but I very rarely read reviews before reading a book, and usually if I read them it's because I'm trying to understand something. So here, when I finished this book, I didn't know how I felt about it. Like, I felt very conflicted and confused and everything, so I wanted to read reviews. And when I read reviews, I have a tendency, I do this with products too, by the way, is I like to read very negative, like 1 and 2 star reviews along with like 5, like I like to read the whole gamut because I feel like that's a good view. I think I did a video about that once or something, about how like negative reviews can be a good thing. Maybe I just thought about doing it because you can learn something about whatever. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. And I was having trouble with these negative reviews, figuring out why people were giving it negative reviews. Now this book has a ton of reviews, so I can't read them all. A lot said that they DNF'd it, that they found Ryle's character problematic, and I just thought that was so funny because I just wanted to like comment on all of them and be like, yeah, that's the point. He's supposed to be problematic, like you're supposed to see those signs. And so I don't know. I was having trouble finding reviews from people who didn't like the book, who did finish it, or that were descriptive enough. And I know my reviews aren't always that descriptive, so it's not a complaint or anything, but I was just trying to figure out what they didn't like about it. I don't think it's a perfect book. It's probably my least favorite Colleen Hoover book so far. It was just something that I observed. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. So let me know what you thought of it down in the comments, or shoot me like a message on Goodreads or something if you want to do it spoilery and are worried. I'm more likely to get it there. Yeah, them's my thoughts on It Ends With Us. Thank you so much for watching and having patience with me if you watch this whole video. Bye.